Hi. As she said, my name's Jessica, and if I'm not loud enough, just raise your hand and I'll try to project a little more towards the back. I've been the market coordinator at Holly Springs for 3.5 years now, and it's the best job I've ever had. I have no plans of going anywhere in the near future. I understand there's kind of a mix of market managers and vendors here today, so I've got kind of a couple of different angles that I'm going to talk about. We are entering our 14th season, and we're currently in our 6th winter season right now. And this last year has been a huge amount of change for us. We have changed everything from the office that I sit in to our market location to the department that the farmers market reports to our software, to you name it. It was just a really big change in everything this past year, which was a little stressful, but everything is really good. A lot of really good change. So I kind of want to go back to the very beginning and talk about where we started and how we got to where we are now. This is an aerial view of our last market location, which was across the street from Town Hall. And it was in it was actually a shared parking lot, which kind of gave us some logistical challenges because part of it was on church property and part of it was on an office property. So we weren't allowed to have any alcohol on the church property, so they had to be around that little L there on the side. And nobody wanted to be around the L on the side because, they perceived that was sort of, out of the way. But what was really interesting was that was where the electricity was, and that was where the band was, and that was where the alcohol was. So it actually ended up being kind of the best place to be when we were there. But as you can see here, this is one of the last layouts that we had in that location, and we were just absolutely jam-packed, and there was really not much in the way of options to continue to expand. What you can see there on the left is there's a little side street that once a month the chamber members had like an artisan market. And so that one weekend a month, that whole street would be filled too. So there was kind of this weird U-shaped market that we had going on that we had to close the street off for, and it was kind of confusing for people as to why there were people on the street some weeks but not others. So at the end of last year, being maxed out with our vendors, we started to look at some other options. And our new location is the star there is where the old location was by Town Hall, and then over to the left is where we are now. You can see that there's a big loop around the Holly Springs Cultural Center, which is also the library. It's about 2 blocks away from where we had been before. And it has provided a lot of really nice benefits for us. When we used to hold the winter market inside, which was the first 3 years, it was actually inside the Cultural Center, which was interesting to communicate to people that, this is our summer location and this is our winter location. But at least there was some degree of familiarity there with people. Oh, that's where the winter market, used to be. So we were able to communicate that. It gave us the ability to block off the street, but we were also able to maintain complete accessibility to the cultural center and the connecting streets. You can see the roundabouts. Basically, we take up that entire area from roundabout to roundabout on the northern portion of the loop there. And so emergency vehicles and just general traffic flow can go on the bottom there. It was really interesting, despite posting every single Facebook post, every single email for the last year, because we did move to this new location in October of 2018. Up until about August, we had people coming to the market saying, "We didn't know where you went," despite literally every single post saying, "New location." And I'll show you some of the communications that we did there. But so we put an A-frame up at the old market location. So if people did happen to drive by there, they would hopefully see the sign and be redirected 2 blocks to the west. So one of the best things about our new location is indoor plumbing. We used to have Public Works deliver a porta potty every week, and also our supply trailer. We have a 15-foot supply trailer that they would move from storage into the market area every week. And it was extra manpower, and they were getting time and a half on Saturdays. They were wonderful about it, but we wanted to see if we could kind of eliminate that extra outpay that we had to do with that. It's really nice when it's 105 out to be able to go into the climate-controlled lobby. We didn't have that before. And it's given us additional accessibility options for people in wheelchairs and who have other accessibility issues. So that's been wonderful too. We have more parking, which is fantastic. The old location used to be you had to cross the really busy main street, and while there is a crosswalk there, people don't slow down like they're supposed to. They didn't stop. So this is nice because there is dedicated parking around the area where it's right there next to the market, which is pretty great. It gives us a more consistent Wi-Fi for our customers when they're using their credit cards, which of course the vendors appreciate. And let's see, next slide here. We've got this great outdoor stage too. Depending on the size of our performers, sometimes they play in the 10 by 10 tent in the market, but sometimes when we have the bigger bands like the jazz orchestra or like a really, a rock band who has, loud percussion and amplification, it's nice to have them on the outdoor stage where they can really just kind of let it go. So that's been fun. I don't know if the old location, zero shade whatsoever. And this one you can see we've got a lot of nice palm trees. Don't I wish? Pine trees on the side there. And it's a little more cozy. It's very much it feels more like a destination for Saturday mornings rather than some people set up some tents in a parking lot. It's a little more structured. So ideally, so I started in 2016, and when I started, they said, 5 years from now, you're going to have a farmer's market pavilion. Well, I've been there for 3.5 years, and they're still telling me 5 years from now we're going to have a farmer's market pavilion. This has brought us closer to that destination. Right now, it's the big wooded area behind these trees. And actually, based on the plan that they had submitted a while back, we've outgrown what they had planned for us. So I'm interested to see how they're going to maneuver with that and see what's to come there. And I'm going to go back a slide here too. So again, with the full northern part there, we actually have 74 spaces now, which is nice. I did not anticipate, the way the market used to be set up was some of our vendors had the trailers and then they had their tents in front of the trailers. But this road is narrow enough that now they have to be kind of next to each other. So there was lots of learning in this last year, and there was a curve and addressing challenges as they came. But I feel like, and I've got 3 vendors here now, I feel like we have kind of addressed all of those and we're in a happy new place, right? I hope. Good. Does anybody have any questions about like a market transition or how we got to where we are today? Yes.
I just got a question.
Yeah.
So when they started the farmers market in Alice Springs, was it the town ran it or hired a manager? Is that how?
Yes. So when it started back in 2007, and I think the first year or so, it might have been 7, 10 vendors. And this was before my time, but my understanding is that it got a little bit of a reputation for being a junk market. Because there were not a lot of farmers and producers at the time. They had people who were making crafts that were maybe not really up to par, and they had to overcome that. We are now a producers-only food market. We have one vendor who is a non-food vendor who we're kind of letting her continue, but if she ever chooses to leave, it'll be 100% food only to help with that. About 36, and some of those are every other week, and then some of those are, a few times during the season, depending on what their schedule is with shows and that sort of thing.
How many vendors do you average a week?
I would say about 28 to 30 during the summer, and during the winter, it's been pretty standard, about 24. Yeah. And the biggest complaint we used to get during the winter was there's no produce. But thanks to Sweet Peas, we have microgreens and some produce from them throughout the winter. And we also have 2 farms who have hoop houses and other season extending options that we do have produce all winter long. One of the biggest things that we need to do is to educate people that we are a producers only market and everything needs to be grown in North Carolina. So when they say we need more farmers, what I'm hearing is we want strawberries in October. And that's what that really means. And so, you know, and we're trying to constantly educate them about that. We have a big produce availability chart that we hang on our tent, and then we also hand it out as a bookmark so people can, you know, kind of keep that with them and remind them that, you know, watermelons are not available in April. Let me think if there's anything else on transition type stuff. So it started off in the planning and zoning department of all places, which was kind of strange, but that seemed to be where the idea came from, and they ran with it. And it was in really good shape when I started there, so I really just had to not mess it up, which was nice. But we did transition over to Parks and Rec about this time last year, unofficially, and then officially starting in May of 2019. And that's been nothing but good. It's way more logical that that's where the market be. And we've had tons of support from basically everybody in the town. So, cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've grown our market. There's been a lot of different tacts that we've taken with it. Somehow I missed our challenges. There were a few challenges with the new location, and a lot of this involved signage. So because of the roundabout loop that we have, I was really surprised that people who live in Holly Springs didn't realize that loop went all the way around, so they got really confused, and we literally had to come up with detour signs to point people around the loop, which is not a big deal, but again, there was that learning curve where, okay, people are confused, they don't know where they're going, what can we do to fix that? And so we have A-frames at both of the roundabouts too, that they literally just say farmers market today from X to X. Our hours vary from season to season, winter to summer, so whichever season we're in. Again, literally every communication that we sent out. The one on the right here was our social media header all last year. The one on the left was what went out in our water bill. We have a little 2-page newsletter that goes out with the water bill, so that was out every month during the last year. We have an email blast that we send out every week. The header on that says new location. And it took until, I would say, August of this year, so a good 9 months before that kind of calmed down. And we did do one post on social media that was like, why did we move? And I explained all of the things that kind of addressed why this is a better location for us. It's funny though, because people still, during our winter season, which we're in right now, they'll come up and they'll say, oh, well, I thought you would be inside the cultural center like you were last year. Well, we haven't been inside the cultural center for 3 years now. So, you know, people don't pay attention. So you have to over communicate with them a lot of times. So, let's see. The biggest frustration I have with the new location is that it is an active street until I get the barricades up. And as much as I've tried to communicate that, every week I get there and there's a vendor who has set up I'm like, oh, that makes me so nervous. But, you know, we've done what we can do, and I've gotten there a little bit earlier to try and address that because safety is obviously one of our biggest concerns. So, all right. We have a great customer loyalty program. Basically, people come and get their card at the info tent, and they get a punch. And during the summer, when they get 5 punches, they get to take home one of our kitchen gadgets. And we've done everything from bamboo cutting boards to last year were these cool salad shakers. We've done coasters and whisks and you name it. I've pretty much cleaned out Crestline on all of their kitchenware items, but they're very popular. I had a lady who showed up at the market one morning. She was bawling. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, our dog died this morning, but I had to come get my card punched. I would have absolutely done that for you next week. But it's definitely got a very big following there. All right. Market and vendor promotion. I like to think that this is kind of where I shine. I think this is where I really add benefit to my position. I do a lot of things not only to promote our market, but also our individual vendors. These here are examples of the ads that I do every week, and I tailor those specifically to what's going to be at market that week. So again, you're not going to see strawberries on here in October, that kind of thing. And I try to do a good mix of the prepared foods versus the meats and cheese and produce, that sort of thing. And it takes a little bit of playing with to get it kind of visually appealing too, but usually it gets to a point where I'm like, yes, I'm happy with this, and then, post it up. One of the things that I would recommend you do is if there's like a local group in Facebook, like in Holly Springs, we have the ladies of Holly Springs, we have the women of Holly Springs, we have the women of Holly Springs, Apex, and Fuquay. So usually on Thursday evenings, I go out and I post whatever our main market post for that week out to those different groups. Thursday evening seems to be the best time to post about things that are happening on the weekend. That seems to be when moms are sitting down and, thinking ahead to their activities in the days ahead. We do something called the Spotlight Vendor of the Week. And this is actually something that we sell a sponsorship for. And last year we sold 2, which was kind of cool. So this is an example of our website, and you can see our beekeeper over there at the right. And depending on what this particular vendor doesn't have a website, so I didn't have a whole lot of information to be able to share about them. But we do a whole blurb. I usually run it by the vendors, or if, they're a continuing vendor, we, grab it from the previous years if there's been any other changes. But so not only are they featured on the Spotlight Vendor post here, they get a special Facebook post, and then they also have a sign at market that week that it's about this big, and it says Spotlight Vendor, and it has their name on it. And I've had several people who've indicated that that was useful in drawing people to their tent that week. And I encourage them to offer specials or samples or something to, kind of capitalize on that extra attention that they can be getting that week. We also, on our website, and this is actually just a screenshot of a little bit further down on that page, this shows our what's coming to market page. And this is updated every week, and it lists the different vendors and kind of a summary of what they bring. And every week, if they send me new information, like Beverly a couple weeks ago is bringing some Buckeyes and some chocolate-covered fruit, which she hadn't normally been bringing. So that was featured on there. And then the photos that you see at the right are actually little slideshows. And so those are updated every week too, to ensure that, if Beverly's not there that week, that, none of her products show up, so that people don't come to the market and be like, well, the website said, because, the website's the Bible. So I do social media posts for the market, like I said, but if the vendors do email me their specials or that sort of thing, I will always reshare that. I have this massive library of photos at this point. For 3.5 years, I've been taking product photos every weekend, and I've got some pretty good ones depending on the light and whatnot. So I can always go out and grab, some beautiful carrot pictures, or, if it's Thanksgiving, I know that our maple syrup lady had a really pretty Thanksgiving display last year. And so, I kind of pull that stuff in. And that's kind of nice, just from the continuity of it. Since I've been there long enough, I know what's there, which would be hard for somebody new coming in to build that back up or to be aware of what's in there. So, any posts that the vendors share, Facebook and Instagram are kind of our biggest medium right now. Twitter hasn't taken off really well. I think it's just our demographic is a little bit older than, it's not dead, but it's definitely not as hot as Instagram and Facebook. So these are a couple of the ways that the town has participated in helping to promote us. The one on the left it goes in our Parks and Rec promotional bulletin each month. We call it our hurrahs, and basically it's all of the art classes and the music classes and athletics and that sort of thing. So it was really nice that they started to include us in that. And then the one on the right, again, that is what we put in the water bill. And the one on the left is our most recent one. And so I finally backed off of the new location communications there because people seem to have finally figured it out. Okay. I had Hannah pass out a page full of some social media tips, and this is by no means encyclopedic, but they are some of my favorite tips for social media. The biggest one in terms of growing your fan base is the concept of inviting people to like your page. So starting in February, I will go back to the beginning of January, all of my posts, and I will click on the little, I've got it starred there, and I think it's on that form as well. But if you click on the little line that says, these people liked your page, it'll take you to this next pop-up window, and you'll see that there is a little thing there that says invite. And that's how I've grown our social media following. When I started, I think we had about 1,000 followers, and we're pretty close to 6,000 now. It's just one of those nice little mindless things you can do while you're eating lunch, or if you're in the car at carpool, and you can do it on your phone. But it's really quick, and it definitely reaps the benefits pretty quickly. We've had some other good. Let's say I talked about the groups. One of the other things that I like on that page is the words not to use. And if you post something that says that something's on sale or a percentage off or a discount, that is not going to get shown to as many people as if you were a little more creative about that. So what I've done with that is if I have somebody who says, they're having 20% off of Miss Heidi's sauce this week, I will take a graphic of her product photo and I will put, a little title on the bottom of it. Facebook doesn't see that. They can't read the words on that. To them, it's just an image. And so I'll do a post for Miss Heidi that says, this is what she's bringing to market this week. But then the first picture that people will see with that post says 20% off. And somehow that slips under Facebook's algorithm, at least at the moment. So very handy there. But there's some other good things on there that are useful. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I enjoy the social media. It's always changing though. If you have the chance to get some social media classes or webinars, I definitely recommend it because just about the time you think you have it figured out, it changes again. So one of our most popular things to draw people into the market is our events. And, events are, they require a lot of extra work, but they're usually pretty worth the effort. This is what we typically do from May through October. As I said, the chamber has kind of picked up the artisans. Anything that's non-food, the chamber is there once a week or once a month to handle that for us. But we have sponsors who come in who do the kids' activities, and we try to have those be really value added. We have science experiments, and we have games and face painting, stuff that the kids get really excited to come to market for. Touch a Truck is always, really popular, and most of the municipalities will have like an outreach program with their police and fire where they kind of need to get in front of the public X number of times a year. And so they usually jump at the chance to come out and do that sort of thing. And, kids love that. And, where the kids go, the parents go. So that's always a big one. We have live music every week, and we do pay a small stipend for that. We're able to pay about $100 a week for that. But we have a pretty good mix of bands, everything from big band to, some pretty good rock and roll music to, Puff the Magic Dragon. Very varied. One of the things I'm looking forward to bringing back this year is our cooking demonstrations. In the past, I have not really had any help out at the market, and they were able to hire me a part-time assistant this past year, and she's got a lot of event experience too, and we're really looking forward to bringing this back because it benefits not only the market attendance overall, but we're buying things from the vendors to do these cooking demonstrations, and hopefully, educating people on how to use some of I like to try and gear it towards some of the more unique vegetables at the market. I don't know what to do with kohlrabi, so I would like to, highlight that so that that's what is being bought this week. Founders Day is an interesting one for us. It started off, it's actually to celebrate Town Founder's birthday, and it has become an interesting mix. We have a bunch of town departments who come out. So the planning department comes out and talks about what's coming to town, and Parks and Rec comes out and talks about their activities. And we usually have about 8 to 10 different town departments who come and do their thing, and it's wildly popular, which I would never have expected. This year, we're trying to bring in some community groups too. So some 501c3s who are based in Holly Springs, because normally we don't allow them at the market. We have a pretty solid policy on it. It has to be a paid sponsorship or vendorship in order to come to the market, but we're going to allow a one-day exception to that this year. We partnered with the NC Specialty Foods Association last year, and we had 2 different specialty foods fairs, which is actually where I found Beverly and Heidi, which is great. We've got a couple other vendors who've turned up from that too. Oktoberfest is new to us this year. We're going to have a beer garden, and we're going to focus on our sausage and pretzels and cheese that day. We've got a special Oompa band coming. Pumpkin Palooza, we pulled out of my ear last year. When a sponsor buys a special event sponsorship, they get 2 event days at market, and we only had 1 left to sell. So we kind of came up with Pumpkin Palooza, and we had a big guess the weight of the pumpkin contest, and we had pumpkin bowling and pumpkin tic-tac-toe and a scavenger hunt, and it was wildly popular, and we're absolutely doing it again this year. Battle of the Badges Chili Cook-Off. We actually used to do a huge community chili cook-off, and then we didn't have help anymore to do that, and so we trimmed it back, and it's actually kind of a self-perpetuating event at this point, which most of these are, which is kind of nice. It's police versus fire, and they do these hilarious videos where they trash talk each other, and it's great. The fire department won it the first 2 years, and police came back and won this year. So I was very happy for them. But yeah, it's, people want to come out and support their first responders. So that's, again, always a good way to get them to come out to the market. And we actually have one of my vendors who starts growing his beard out in about July. And he is our Santa each year, and he's very convincing. But there are lots of Santas out there who can come and do that sort of thing. But that's definitely a draw during the off season. So. All right, I think that is everything that I had planned, but I am happy to answer any questions. I know I talk fast.
Okay, I've got a long list of questions. I'll try and keep.
No, go for it.
So how much does it cost for the vendors?
My understanding is we're pretty inexpensive. If you came all 37 dates for the entire season, had 2 spaces and electricity, I think it's $300. Most of the vendors come in less than $200 to come for, if it's just one booth, every day, I think it's around $200.
So you have plans where they can buy,
Yep.
So they have to pay in advance for
Yep.
all of the ones that they're going to come to, or can they come month to month, or that's not?
We allow that too. It's more expensive for them to do that. We'd prefer if they, load, and I'm really flexible with that. If you sign up for 6 days and you have to reschedule a couple of them, I keep track of that. I want you to get your 6 days. So I'm always I'm really cognizant. It's really important to me that my vendors are successful, and I want to support them any way I can. But we even have an option where, like, if you grow pumpkins and you have a 6-week growing season, you can come for 6 weeks during, your peak season. So.
I might talk to you afterwards.
No, that's fine.
What's your ratio to produce vendors in your prepared? It sounds like you have a lot of prepared food vendors. So what is that?
We do. So this past summer, I think we had 7 produce vendors, and the season before we had 8. And 8 was probably one too many. And so we had one who kind of self-selected out. I think 7 was a good balance, one of which was one of those 6-week things. I'm thinking we're kind of looking at that for this year. Our numbers were up last year, which was really good. My understanding is that attendance nationwide is down a bit, and we were up a little bit last year. So it's hard to balance the demand for the product versus, what's going to get people there versus having the vendors be successful. And I'm always trying to walk that line.
So aside from the one that you said is just their peak season,
Mm-hmm.
do you have those 6 every week, or do some
Yes.
come every other?
Well, they all come every week. I do have one who tapers off about September, but the rest of them I have 3 that are year round at this point, and then the other 2 are just the traditional season.
So what's your average attendance? Or
And actually, that's one of the things we track. So about 850 is our regular week. We had a giant food truck rodeo 2 years ago where we closed down 2 blocks of Main Street, and we had over 3,000 people that day. But especially with our new location, that's not feasible anymore because it's too far removed. We have done a number of food truck rodeos, but they're smaller and they're much more manageable too. The big one was many months in planning. So it doesn't bring quite as many people in, but it's also not as frustrating.
So how do you track your attendance?
So every year we do a survey of our customers, and it's been very consistent that most people are there for about a half an hour. And so once an hour, we go through and we count every single person that's there who's not a vendor. And then at the end of the day, we double that. So once an hour and then times 2 since they're there for half an hour. And they've done that from the very beginning. So at the very least, it's apples and apples. Yeah. It's not perfect, but we've got multiple entry points.
Yeah. It's really hard.
Yeah. But and there are definitely days where I look at our numbers and go, there were more people here than this today because all my vendors are happy, but they wouldn't be if this was right. But we have a really solid base group of customers who will come out regardless of the weather. We've probably got about 150 who will come out.
So you go rain or shine.
Yep.
Snow or...
We haven't dealt with that yet. Yeah. As long as there's not dangerous weather, if there's no lightning or high winds, we've almost had to call it for wind a few times. But actually, earlier this season, we just had the vendors set up out of their trunks of their cars. We said no tents. The tents were going to be a projectile risk, but we were busy that day.
What's your current population in Holly Springs?
I have no idea. I'm sorry. If I had to wager a guess, I'd say 30,000, but I don't know where that number's coming from. So I'll be honest. Huh? Okay.
Okay, so you guys run in the winter season twice a month, but the summer starting in May, you run every week.
Yes, and we're hoping that starting next winter season, we're just going to be year-round every week.
Do you go every Saturday?
Yes, yes, pretty much. I missed 2 this past summer, but yeah, for the most part. Yep.
Because we've done it a few weeks last year, and we were very impressed. It was a great farmers market. It's almost like a family event. People come, even if it's just for a half hour, or they're there for 15 minutes, and they say, oh no, we just want to run down, we saw, oh, your sauce is here because we saw it online. She's great on Facebook. They'll say, oh yeah, we saw you're here, so we're gonna be here. Oh, okay, and you're just shocked. But it's a community plus environment. It's really, really nice. And everyone gets along, and it's very, I don't know, I keep saying it, but very well organized is the tip to happy vendors. And everyone's always happy.
Yeah, our vendors do get along really well. There's very little drama. Anybody else? All right. Well, we've got Tammy Perdue here from Sweet Peas Urban Gardens, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about kind of the marketing and the sales point of view from your table. And I've got to get her mic'd up real quick. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, that's Tammy's.
Is this Tammy?
Yes.
Hey, Tammy, you mind if I flip this to you real quick? Okay.
Okay.
Your stuff right here, and you just drop down the pocket.
Okay.
Put it to your side pocket, or put it in your pocket, whichever
Okay.
one you prefer.
Okay.
That is my presentation slide.
That's very good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for having us from Holly Springs out here in Zebulon. I think you have just heard the reason that Holly Springs is successful, and it's that young lady who just spoke. She's very organized, and she's very passionate about running that market. I have been a vendor in Wake County for 5 years at various markets, and I haven't seen anything like what Jessica does. Very supportive, and also the town supports this market. To have a position that the town pays for to run this market is fabulous. So having been in markets all over Wake County for 5 years, this is also the most successful for me for my business. So I do credit the town for the support of Jessica's position and her new assistant, and for finding Jessica, who I always say, Jessica's the bomb. So anyway, some of the things I've learned along the way in the 5 years that I've been running a booth at a farmer's market, I have a niche product. So I have to do a lot of education. People don't know what microgreens are, especially 5 years ago. It's becoming more and more understood now. So I spend time with people talking about what they are and what their health benefits are. I have some graphics that I print, and I show, somebody who's engaged with wheatgrass shots, the health benefits of wheatgrass shots. So I have all of these little support paper at my booth. And that usually gets a conversation going, and it usually gets people interested. My product is nutrient dense, so I get folks who are interested in health and remediating some disease issues. One of the things I learned a couple years ago from a market strategy person is your eye is attracted by green. So I always use a green tablecloth, something that will just immediately draw something to my table, I hope, because that's one of the things that attracts the human's eye. So we try to pull those little tricks at our booth to get people to be engaged. We have a wheatgrass juicer, so I make a lot of noise and commotion, and people are like, "What's that?" And so we do live wheatgrass shots at that market. And we have, politically, we have been pushing the agenda of farmers markets. Sorry, did it go down on my? Can you hear me now? Really? Okay. Do I need to just? Okay. Somebody going to turn that off? Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? Is that better? Like Jessica referred to, produce and produce vendors at farmers markets have been dwindling off. There's studies nationwide, one out of Cornell in the last 6 months about attendance at farmers markets going south. And one of the things that I like about Jessica is she's always looking at the trends, and she attends the conferences about what's going on with farmers markets nationally. And this last year, we tried something that this organization recommended, and I thought it would be really a good thing because it looks like people who go to farmers markets right now are roughly my age and older, and we're not getting a lot of the younger folks coming in to replace them. It looks like farmers markets are starting to be off trend. So we tried this app that the town was involved in. I don't know for sure how many people actually got orders through the app, but the idea was to get somebody who was used to going to a farmer's market or knew the vendor or knew that there was going to be, something at the farmer's market that they really wanted to get, but they didn't have the time. So the app let somebody order it, and then the vendor would just have it so they could jump in and then go run their errands and not spend the 30 minutes that usually it takes to walk through all of our vendors and see what's going on. I love that. I don't think we're quite ready. We're quite there yet. But what we're concerned about as produce vendors is the lack of how many people are buying produce from farmers markets in Wake County and nationally is dwindling, and we're concerned that this trend is not getting a lot of attention. I brought with me a friend farmer from Garner, who I'd love for him to come up here and put his 2 cents in with me about this issue. But as much as you can do to market as a vendor, I have aprons with my logo on it. I wear this in the winter. I have 100 business cards. It's not changing that dynamic. And I think it's important that market managers understand what's going on with farmers markets nationally, and keep abreast of what kind of things they can do, not rely on what was done in the past. But we have to be innovative and start thinking about the future and the kids who are coming, the millennials who, they don't even know how to cook. So Wegmans kind of put us all in a frightening space, because they brought to this market everything that you could possibly need in 15 seconds. You go in and you have your roast beef and your mashed potatoes and you just pop it in your microwave and you're done. And the nutritional value of that food is not being discussed. And so as a produce vendor, I just wanted everybody who is looking at having farmers markets, and I really appreciate you guys hearing us out today, that this problem is we're seeing it in our business. I think Tom has been farming for 20 years, and he's been at farmers markets and has had a CSA, and his numbers are falling off. Tom and I attended a farm advocacy group in Wake County, CAFN, the Capital Area Food Network, on Monday. And we were there with 7 farmers, and it was the most depressing stories of everybody's produce farmers, everybody having to sell their farm. So my point is, if you want to have produce farmers at your farmers market, I think you need to embrace the newest ways that technology can be used to help your vendors, but embrace your vendors. And it's hard to farm, and It's a really fabulous thing when a whole community can be engaged in a farmer's market and get healthy local food. There's nothing more nutritious than buying food directly from a farmer in your own community. In addition to it being a great community building activity and economically good for the community. So anyway, Jessica and I talk about this all the time, and I love that she's open to hearing conversations about the negative side of farmers markets and trying to pivot our farmers market to make sure that we don't become a dinosaur and that that we're successful. And so far, it's worked really well there. But I'm happy to answer any questions if you have about farmers market produce vendors at a farmers market. Yes, ma'am.
Totally fine. That's what I wrote Roosevelt farmers market. Our struggle is finding somebody. I just need at least one other farmer to come, but we don't have 850 people. We have maybe 20 to 30 at this point, which we're growing, but it's kind of a catch-22.
Sure.
Vendors, you're not gonna have people. If you don't have the people, the vendors don't.
That's right. That's exactly right. It has to all work together, or it's not going to work. When we were at the point of this meeting we were at Monday was to try to get a database of all of the Wake County, even the Triangle farms, because there is no comprehensive list, and that's astonishing to me. Even the USDA's list isn't comprehensive because a lot of farmers don't register with the USDA. So there is a group trying to get that moving. There's a group called Piedmont Grown, and they are the engine behind the data collection for getting this registered. But yeah, it is a challenge. When I first started growing microgreens, I had a young lady from Hawaii who came knocking on my door and saying that she'd just come from Hawaii, and there's a farmer's market every 15 feet in Hawaii because produce just grows out of the sidewalk. So she was used to having access to a whole bunch of produce, and she got to Wake County and she was like, I can't find anything. I mean, I'm not going to the grocery store. I have a 2-year-old and I don't want him eating food from the grocery store. I want to find local food. So her idea was to create a website of the farms that she found. And she just talked to each of us. As she met one, she'd, oh, I know this guy. And so she'd go out and vet the farms and make sure that they were, not sprayers and not, that they were trying to be organic if they weren't certified organic for her family. And it became, she had about 25, 30 of us, but that was astonishing to me. That's 30. I think there's at least, I was at Wake Soil and Water for a presentation a couple years ago, and they had kept some records that they knew because farmers had approached them for water issues, like any kind of pond issue, or they'd gotten folks curious. So they did have a list of 750 farms that they knew. And now that was astonishing too, because I don't know that I could name even 100, maybe 100. But it is a problem. It's hard to farm. It's hard to find resources to get to that place where you can even market yourself. But most young farmers who are starting off are trying to at least put themselves in a farmer's market near them. So, or, you're like you're saying, we all talk about which ones are successful and which ones we can make the most money at. So it is some people travel clear across the county to get to a farmer's market because they think it's going to be successful for them. Sure. And I see far more of that than I see people who are certified organic. But it's part of the conversation that you have with your client when you get them over to your table. People ask me that a lot, just because my product has so much history of research about how nutritious it is. But the integrity of growing your product in a clean way and being able to sell it when you've got somebody sitting beside you who's not is always that's a battle at a farmer's market every time. Tom's trying to convince me that I need to embrace all farmers, all produce farmers, and not be dismissive of folks who are not who are growing conventionally, because they are adding value to the food chain. If we eat more vegetables, what's your statistic over there from the USDA? 12% of Americans, right, eat fruits and vegetables. Of all of us, rich people, poor people, that's all we're eating. So it's a big, if we can get people to eat more vegetables and not be shaming the folks who are doing things that I don't agree with. I when I came into this world, I was I was positive that there was no, those were the people I wanted not to be like, was the conventional farmers. But they have come from a place, they've moved into, at least they're growing vegetables. They weren't growing tobacco. So I do want to be more embracing of all. This is our food. And if we run out of food, if we don't have farmers growing our food, we're heading, the World Health Organization is predicting we're going to run out of food by 2050. And I just heard a new update to that those numbers are coming down closer to 2040 and 2040 because we're not doing anything to correct. That's right. That's right. And so the only solution, the only viable forward solution right immediately is local farmers selling locally to their community. We can save our own communities. We might not be able to save the world right now, but we can certainly grow enough food for our own communities to support ourselves, to keep us going. So, but that's a big political thing. But I hear you, and I know I see it all the time. There's a farmer at Holly Springs who works his butt off, and he's about this skinny, and he doesn't get the credit for all the hard work he does, making sure that his food's organic. He's got a little kid and he's got a wife, and he doesn't want to spray his crops. And I think we need to have a big. That's right, and I think there needs to be a huge. That's right. I think there needs to be a huge sign over his head that says, "This guy works really hard to make sure you have clean, nutrient rich food." Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Celebrate him and yeah, put a big bow on him and say, "Buddy, thank you." He should. I told him. He's a little quiet guy. He's just really humble, but he's remarkable. Yeah.
Well, a program you should consider is certified naturally grown.
Yeah, and I'm certified.
Mm-hmm. Is what really drew us to it, and the cost is substantially less than certified organic.
Yeah. So certified naturally grown is a peer-to-peer certification. There's a few farms in North Carolina, but it's a New York. It's had its beginnings in New York. A bunch of farmers said they didn't want to pay for all the, and it's the same exact paperwork. It's just that another farmer goes and does the audit instead of you hiring a certifier. So they're working hard to get that to be a. I was certified in 2016, I think. So it hasn't really grown. There's nobody in North Carolina who can certify me, and I can't really certify a chicken farmer. So it's really hard in North Carolina. You what?
I need to do a certification.
Okay. Really? Okay. You want to certify microgreens? Hydroponic microgreens. No, it's easy. But yeah, so that, and it's $200. When you do USDA or National Organic Standard Board US certified organic, you have somebody following you for a year, and they're paying. They're getting paid to do that, to make sure that your soil is correct. And sometimes it's 3 years if you're growing on land that was previously sprayed. So it takes a long time to get through that certification, and you're paying for the salary of the person who's watching you when you're doing that. So, I mean, it is subsidized, but it's still expensive. And for produce, they have to check the soil, and that's the thing, and that's the time consuming. For us, I grow hydroponically mostly, and they just have to verify all my seed receipts for a year that I'm buying them from an organic seed source, and that's my inputs. They want to see my inputs, and they have to verify that for a year. So it's $3,000 for me, 2 to 3. Where certified naturally grown is $200. I know there's a lot of them, which is really exciting. I'm currently managing the Well-Fed Garden in downtown Raleigh, and there's a group of community gardens that I wasn't aware of in Raleigh that get together. There's an urban ag collective in Raleigh that's about 30 farms that talk about growing inside the Beltline, but it's all kind of disparate. There's no big catalog of everybody doing, the nonprofits and the for-profit folks. They all, within their own organizations, have, how they contact each other, but there's no big catalog to look this up. So that's the point of the CAFN Farm Advocacy Council, was to try to get this data. It's probably going to be 10 years before we can do it the way it went on Monday, but, we definitely need to be thinking forward and where we're going to go with our food, and how farmers markets can help celebrate the fact that local food is the healthiest thing for our bodies, and people doing it right really need to be rewarded for it, and not just going to the grocery store to get that convenient thing. So anyway. Thank you, everybody, for having us.